The Argonne Forest was alive with whispers of death. Mist coiled between the trees, clinging to the undergrowth like breath on glass. Captain Daniel Whitaker wiped the grime from his face, his eyes scanning the dense canopy above. The morning light barely pierced through the smoke, and the world smelled of damp earth, gunpowder, and fear. He and his men, roughly 550 soldiers of the 77th Infantry Division, had been advancing for 3 days, pushing deep into enemy territory. Orders were clear: hold the position at all costs. But now, as Daniel looked at his map smeared with mud and blood, he realized the truth no one wanted to say aloud. They were cut off. No reinforcements. No communication. No way out. Private Cole stumbled up beside him, panting. "Captain, the runners didn't come back." Daniel didn't look up. "They won't." He folded the map and tucked it into his vest. "We're surrounded." The forest around them was eerily silent. No birds, no wind. Only the distant echo of artillery and the muffled sobs of the wounded. The Argonne was a maze, thick with trees, trenches, and fog so heavy it felt alive. The men crouched low in hastily dug foxholes, clutching rifles slick with mud. Sergeant Alvarez approached, his voice low but steady. "We've got wounded, sir. Running low on rations. Half the men haven't slept in 2 days." Daniel nodded. He had expected this. "We dig in. Hold this ground. The rest of the division will push through soon." He didn't believe his own words, but he couldn't let them see that. By nightfall, the forest came alive with sound. Distant cries, snapping branches, the echo of machine guns somewhere in the black. Flares streaked across the sky, casting brief, ghastly light on faces streaked with mud and terror. In the half-light, Daniel saw Corporal Harris writing something in his notebook. "What's that?" Daniel asked quietly. "A letter, sir, for my wife." That night, the men gathered around a small, smoldering fire, barely aglow, hidden beneath a fallen canopy. The silence between them was heavy. Cole finally spoke. "Sir, what if no one comes?" Daniel looked at him, the flickering light carving deep shadows into his face. "Then we hold anyway. If we die here, we die knowing we didn't give an inch." Cole swallowed hard, nodding, but his eyes betrayed the terror beneath the bravado. Hours passed. Somewhere in the darkness, a faint, unmistakable sound broke the silence. A German voice shouting orders. The men froze. The enemy was closing in. Daniel raised his hand. "Positions," he whispered. "No noise." The forest held its breath. Moments later, the first German soldier stepped into view, rifle gleaming under the moonlight. Daniel felt his pulse pounding in his temples. The man took one step forward, then another. Daniel exhaled slowly, lifted his rifle and whispered, "Now." The night exploded in gunfire. The firefight tore through the forest like thunder. Muzzles flashed between the trees, shadows lunged and fell, and the air filled with the metallic taste of blood and gunpowder. The men of the 77th fired until their rifles grew too hot to touch. Bullets snapped through branches, kicking up bursts of bark and dirt. Private Cole screamed as a round grazed his shoulder, spinning him to the ground. Alvarez dragged him back behind cover, shouting over the roar of gunfire. "Stay with me, kid. You're fine, you hear me?" But Cole's eyes were glassy, his breaths shallow. Captain Whitaker crawled forward, his uniform streaked with mud. "Hold the line! Don't let them break through!" he bellowed. though his voice was hoarse and trembling. The Germans pressed harder, shouting in the darkness, tossing grenades that shattered trees and sent shockwaves through the wounded forest. Each explosion rattled the ground beneath them, and for a fleeting moment, Daniel thought the earth itself wanted to swallow them. Then, silence. A long, heavy pause. Only the crackle of fire and the soft moaning of the wounded filled the void. Daniel peeked over the log. The Germans' days bled together. The forest no longer marked time. It just existed, heavy and still, an open grave waiting to be filled. The surviving men of the 77th Division huddled in their makeshift trench, mud, smoke, and ghosts their only company. The enemy's shelling came and went, like thunder rolling through a storm that never ended. Food was gone, ammunition nearly gone. Water came from puddles filled with ash. Captain Whitaker sat by the dim glow of a dying fire, a small notebook open in his hands. He wrote slowly, his fingers trembling with exhaustion. "To Mrs. Henderson," he muttered quietly. "Your son fought bravely, until the very end." Across from him, Alvarez stared blankly into space, cradling his rifle like a child clings to a toy. Harris leaned against a tree, lips moving silently in prayer. "Writing letters again?" Alvarez asked hoarsely, his voice little more than a rasp. Daniel nodded. If they don't make it, someone has to tell their families what they were worth. Even if no one ever reads them. Daniel paused. The wind howled through the trees, carrying the faint stench of rot. Especially then. From somewhere in the darkness, a low groan echoed. Private Cole stirred, barely conscious, his wound red and swollen. Daniel crawled to him, holding a canteen to his lips. "Easy, soldier." Just a sip, Cole swallowed, then whispered, "Do you think they know we're still here?" Daniel hesitated. He could lie, but the truth was crueler and more sacred. "They will." One way or another, Cole tried to smile, but it broke halfway. "My mom, she used to say the stars watched over us. Think they still are." Daniel looked up through the tangled branches. The sky was a pale smear of gray, no stars to be seen. "Yeah," he said softly. "They're watching." That night, the hallucinations began. Hunger and exhaustion had turned the forest into something alive, breathing, whispering, taunting. Men woke screaming from dreams of home or from the touch of phantom hands. Jensen, the same private who'd wanted to surrender. Sundown came cloaked in fog and firelight. The forest shimmered with an eerie stillness, as though the world itself were holding its breath. Smoke coiled through the trees, glowing faintly in the dying light of a bruised orange sky. Captain Whitaker crouched low, tracing a rough map in the mud with the tip of his knife. "We move north, toward Hill 198. If we make it past the ridge, there's a chance we'll find friendly lines." Alvarez nodded grimly. "And if we don't? Then we make the bastards pay for every inch." The men gathered around him, what remained of them, less than 30 now, hollow-eyed, gaunt, their uniforms in tatters. Yet when Daniel looked into their faces, he saw something still burning there. Defiance. "Tonight," he said, voice steady despite the tremor in his chest, "we move together. No man left behind. If one of us falls, another carries him." "Understood." A few murmured, "Yes, sir." Others simply nodded. It was enough. As darkness fell, they began their crawl through the ruins of the forest. Every branch creaked like a warning. Every step felt like trespass in the land of the dead. The wounded were carried on makeshift stretchers fashioned from torn coats and rifle straps. The rest moved silently, eyes wide, rifles ready. The fog thickened until shapes became shadows. Shadows became ghosts. Then came the sound they all dreaded, the click of a rifle bolt behind them. "Lauf!" someone shouted in German. Gunfire erupted. Muzzle flashes burst like lightning, cutting through the fog. Bullets ripped into the trees. Men screamed. Daniel dropped to the ground, dragging Cole's stretcher into a shallow trench. "Return fire!" he roared. The forest came alive with chaos. Grenades thundered, fire bloomed, and men vanished in bursts of smoke. Daniel saw Alvarez go down, clutching his chest but still firing until his last breath. Harris crawled up beside Daniel, blood running down his cheek. "We're pinned, sir!" Daniel's heart hammered. He knew what had to be done. He grabbed the flare pistol from his belt. A single red flare. Days later, American forces pushed through the Argonne. They found the remnants of the 77th Division, broken, starved, but unbowed. Harris sat among them, his captain's notebook clutched to his chest. Inside were dozens of letters, each one addressed to the families of the fallen. He handed it to a medic with trembling hands. "Make sure these get home," he said. The medic nodded solemnly. "You men held the line longer than anyone thought possible. You saved hundreds by keeping the Germans here." Harris looked toward the trees where the smoke still hung low. "We just followed the captain," he murmured. As the soldiers were led away, the wind carried a whisper through the forest. Soft, steady, unyielding. No one forgotten. And somewhere above, the flare's crimson ghost faded into dawn.